What is up, investors? It's Friday, and that means you get to celebrate the best day of the week with a new episode of In the Green. Today, I had a super cool conversation with 16-year-old investor user Shivam Siddaiya. We talked about how he became a great investor at such a young age.
I'm at the bank making money, making moves. Machines with tools and drills, making grooves. Missions impossible. That's lots of.
What's up, Shivam? How are you doing today?
Hey Charlie, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. So, could you just start by briefly introducing yourself to the investor community?
Right, so my name's Shivam Siddaiya. I'm a high schooler in Texas, specifically in Plano. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at Plano West, and I'm pretty interested in investing. And the Investor app has been helping me a lot over the past few years, to improve my investing strategies and to just improve overall. So I'm really happy to be here.
So, at just 16, how did you get into becoming a huge investor at this young age?
Yeah, so it actually started when I was about 14 or almost 15 years old, my freshman year of high school. Some of my friends who also do Cash Club, which is an organization we founded, we started it at Shepton High School, and we started as just a club, so an investment club. So one day my friend just called me up and he's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, it sounds like a cool idea, and it kind of just went from there. And I learned a lot by really just reading articles online, and then I found Invstr, which is where I really learned a lot of met new people, and I learned a lot about investing. So it's kind of just grown from there. And yeah.
So, how did Cash Club exactly start? You had to have some interest in the markets, I assume, at least a little bit beforehand to start this investing club, right?
Right. So the first year of Cash Flow was kind of like the experiment year where I really found that interest. And that's where we just had it at one school and we were kind of testing out. And I was kind of finding my ground on whether I like it or not. And I really, really did like it. And we found the summer after, like kind of ourselves expanding this idea out into like different clubs and branches. So our goal became helping other students do the same thing, start clubs at their school and providing them the resources. And one of the resources we've been providing them and like getting them onto is the Investor app, because it's like the practicing what we preach is kind of like where we see Investor coming in to help all these investors like it helped us. So
What are some of the coolest things you got out of being a founder of Cash Club?
honestly, I think like one of the coolest things is actually not even on the investment side. I think it's on the entrepreneurial side. I think working in my own organization that I started, like with some pretty close friends of mine, has been really cool. I know a lot of people say don't mix business with friends, but I say, hey, honestly, don't knock it till you try it. I think sometimes it can be a really great experience. I've built different skills, not only in investing, built like friendships like a lot stronger, and just managing an organization and meeting new kids from all over the world who are also interested in investing has been like one of the coolest experiences.
Yeah. So, how has that entrepreneurial spirit kind of shaped your investing strategy?
Yeah, so I think one thing I was really looking into, and this is something that I was like also thinking about when I was reading about Warren Buffett's strategy, is really looking at the side of the company that isn't like you're investing. It's like you're actually looking at how they work, like who are the leaders of the company and what is their management style. So I think it's kind of shaped it because I've seen, well, this is kind of how managing an organization goes. And even though it's not like a company, there's a lot of similarities. So when I read about different leadership strategies, especially like a lot of the entrepreneurial, like new startups, they have really interesting like tips on productivity. For example, I think Google has like a rule where like 20% of the time for their employees can be spent doing pretty much whatever they want. And the goal there is to like boost productivity. So I think just seeing different ways companies use their employees and like their leadership interacts with just the day-to-day operations is just really interesting.
Who's an entrepreneur you look up to?
I think an entrepreneur that I would look up to probably, it's pretty generic, but honestly, Elon Musk is very, I mean, there's a reason so many people probably look up to him. I think more than what he's done in terms of like his success, I think the reason I look up to him is his failures and the way he's handled them like so tremendously. I think the SpaceX example is really good. Like back in 2008, he had to decide between putting his money into SpaceX and Tesla, and he split it. So he's taking a really huge chance. And then once his rockets failed three times with SpaceX, and him also being the head engineer, you have to really take the burden of losing so much money, disappointing people, but also being able to come back for the fourth time and like everything working out. So I think the perseverance there is undeniable. So even beyond the genius, I think that's really like something I admire.
For sure. So speaking of overcoming challenges as an entrepreneur, Cash Club has been challenged, as have pretty much every business, by COVID. How have you guys dealt with that?
Right. So I think COVID at first was a pretty big hit for us because obviously we operate with in-person clubs, but what we've been doing is making the best use of, the digital connection that you can form. So we kind of took it as a challenge. Hey, why don't we try to connect our club a little bit more, especially since now we're international. So we've been really pushing like having our investor game grow so people can still meet online, and boosting our Discord. And also we've been recording all of our meetings and spreading them throughout all of our branches so we can increase access to like just all of our members to do that. And it's also been a really good opportunity for us to work on new projects in the background because we've had a little bit more time.
So how many people are in the Cash Club Investor League?
Right. So I think right now there's around, I think a couple hundred, I think maybe around 400 now. It might actually be growing. I know we're getting more people every single day in the league, and we're actively seeking out new kids who are interested in joining. But yeah.
What's been your best finish in that league?
I think my best finish was first. I think it was back in June. I remember, I think I finished like second, if I'm not mistaken, in the Supreme League at IFL. I think it was one of the first seasons where like when the new like 3-tiered league started. So I was really excited about that new feature and I really wanted to try it out. So I really spent a lot of time this past summer focusing on Invstr also and just improving my strategy.
That's awesome. Great for you. What was your strategy to be so successful?
Yeah, so one of my strategies like that I've been using in investing, and something I used this summer, was a little bit risky, but I was really like trying out different things, and I was using a lot of technical analysis tools specifically, and I was focusing on ETFs. Obviously like Invstr didn't have all the ETFs, but since they're adding so many, I was getting to try out new ones. Like I remember they added like the VIX, the Fear Index, and stuff. So I was using a lot of different technical tools. I remember using like the RSI and the MACD were two I was using a lot, and I was trading a lot of like leveraged ETFs, which are like pretty interesting because it was a lot of risk, but also I felt that since I was young, like, hey, it's a time to learn. So if you're going to take that risk anytime, you should maybe take it when you're young because the downside's not bad.
What has been your strategy more recently on the app?
Right. So more recently, I've actually had a much more laid back strategy than over the summer because I've been much more busy, but also I've been seeing that because the market's pretty volatile at the moment, it probably makes a lot more sense to take a lot more stable investments. So I've really just been focusing on stability and investing my money into blue chip stocks and like things that are going to have solid, like margins, and their profits aren't going to be like shaken up very easily. So I've been avoiding like super volatile things and sticking to like Apple, Amazon, and like, very like solid companies.
I noticed that you currently are holding nothing in your portfolio. Why is that?
Yeah, so I actually pulled out all of my investments because of the election specifically. I think a lot of current events do affect the market, and I think this one is especially going to affect the market. And when there's large events, either like leading up to or already have happened, I usually try to stay away from the markets for a little, sit back and kind of watch what's happening so I can make better entries and also just not put myself in like a horrible position if it doesn't work out.
So on that note, how often are you kind of following politics to understand their repercussions on the market? I know most of the time high schoolers aren't as involved with politics, but most high schoolers aren't super involved with the stock market. So how engaged are you with politics to understand the implications of what's happening in Washington will do to the market?
Yeah, so actually the other thing I do in high school is debate. So I do a lot of like foreign policy related things, and politics is something I do also follow. I find it interesting. Yeah, no, it's really not terribly hard actually. If people who don't have a lot of time, I'd recommend using Twitter just to follow politics. A lot of the things will come out directly from there, and that'll directly influence the market. So really it's been just a combination of following Twitter, really just keeping track of the news, I think. So it hasn't been like very active. You can do it very passively.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Trump earlier this week tweeted that stimulus talks were ending. Although he ended up walking that back, that tweet alone took the Dow down over 2% within like 10 minutes. So you're so right about how one tweet from a politician can totally change the market. But now moving on to kind of your thoughts on the future, what do you see as the goals for Cash Club over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? And what's your plan when you graduate high school for Cash Club?
Right. So I think our biggest goal is to expand to the maximum number of clubs we can around the world. We really want to reach all the kids around the world who have an interest in investment. Our entire philosophy is just based on there's a lot of talent out there in schools. And if we can just connect them with the right opportunity, the right resources, and a network of kids who, have the same interest, we could not only learn, but we can have a lot of fun together. I really want to explore that. And also within the clubs, we really like to emphasize we want kids that aren't just interested in like necessarily going into Wall Street or whatnot, but we want kids to look at an investing as a really valuable tool in their life. So regardless of what they're interested in, it's just a tool to help you build a stable future. So we really want to just expand globally as much as possible, and really just build a network of kids with similar interests.
On that note of having a wide range of kids with different kind of goals and professions in mind, what do you want to do with your future?
So for me personally, I think I'm interested as of now in finance, but I'm also very interested in philosophy. So I'm probably thinking about either taking some sort of major in finance or economics and possibly like a minor in like philosophy of some sort. But nothing's for certain. I'm still in high school, so I still have a little bit of time to confirm all that. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards as of now.
That's really cool. If you could go to any school in the country, where would you go?
Honestly, I don't know exactly where I would go. I mean, I think if I would just choose now, maybe I would go to like maybe UT or something. It's an in-state school. I know they have a lot of good programs. And yeah, no, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, just as an example, I guess that could be one I would consider. So
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great school. They're struggling a little bit in football these days, but a lot of
for
smart
sure.
kids there. So moving on, one thing I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast, especially someone with your background, imagine there's a 16-year-old who has no experience with the market. What would you tell them as the first piece of advice you'd give them if they're getting involved with the stock market?
I would say keep an open mind and don't jump to don't ever take anyone's advice on faith, which just seems kind of self-contradictory since that is my I'm giving a piece of advice, but really just keep open-minded because you'll hear a lot of conflicting advice and do your own due diligence, I think is probably like the two things I would say is really just make sure you check things yourself, and don't just go off of what other people are saying because being a sheep can really help sometimes, but it can also really bite you bad. So and I think that was something a lot of like beginners get into is like just following the crowd. I mean, it's not always a bad thing, but I think in the long term, the more self-dependent you can be, I think just generally as a rule of thumb, that's a lot better.
Gotcha. So what's the most interesting trade you've ever made?
Oh God, I think the most interesting trade has to be back in April, and I think I was trading. Please never trade this, but I was trading TVIX, which is the fear index leveraged 2 times, which is very volatile. It's already very volatile without the leverage, and with the leverage, it's pretty bonkers. It's gonna move up like easily. I think that day it might have moved like 20%, 30% within an hour. So extremely volatile. And yeah, no, I made a lot. But I think I didn't really close the position in time, so I did walk away with a profit, but it was not as much as I hoped for because I waited a little too long. And that's kind of where like fear of missing out and psychology, like it doesn't interact very well with extremely volatile investments because I don't know, usually markets don't make sense, but I think once you cross the line of like completely nonsensical, it's a little difficult and I wouldn't really put that psychological burden on anybody. So I definitely would not do that again.
Yeah, that's why you trade on the fantasy finance game before you do in the real world, to
Yeah.
learn those things. So speaking of trading in the real world, I know you're not 18, but have you had any opportunity to trade real stocks outside of the fantasy finance game, or have you just paper traded?
Actually, these are all the trades I've been talking about are actually makes. So like I usually like do both trades. Like if I make a trade on fantasy finance that I'm fairly confident, I'll just copy that over to my real portfolio. So I have been trading on my real portfolio. I'm really just waiting for Invstr to release the real trading on there too, so I can put both of those on the same platform. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to continue to take that approach.
Gotcha. Well, I hope you keep doing well on both your real portfolio and your paper trading portfolio. Thank you, Shivam, for coming on In the Green today. You were a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I was really glad to be on.
Making moves, machines with tools and drills, making grooves, missions impossible.
I am not a financial advisor, and my comments should never be taken as financial advice. Investments come with risk, so always do your research and analysis beforehand.